Welcome to the 2024 total solar eclipse, new moon happening in Aries. I have notes for this one because we have a lot to go through as far as all the different energies that are at play in addition to this powerful eclipse. I want to start by saying that we will not be seeing another eclipse that is total. We will have eclipses. We have eclipses every year, but this will be the only one that is absolutely total eclipsed over North America until 2045. So we are feeling this energy and we are going to be feeling it for a while. Eclipses are portals that last up to 6 months because for this one we'll have a new moon, and in 6 months we'll have a full moon in Aries. So that'll be the 6-month eclipse portal that all this energy is going to be activated through. So knowing that it's a portal for that much time, don't feel like just because on Monday it's the big day doesn't mean that anything's going to happen. It might not happen. It might be this thing that plays out over the next 6 months for you in your life. So I am going to go ahead and start with the fact that this is an eclipse happening on the North Node. Eclipses have to be happening on the nodes of the moon, which are known as the nodes of fate. I've done a video on that. If you want to go back and look, I can put the link below for that. That was actually my first video that I made for YouTube. And so we have our North Node in Aries, right? This is why this is an eclipse happening in Aries. We have our South Node in Libra, which is exactly the opposite on the zodiac wheel from Aries. Aries represents the self, and Libra represents how we are in relationships. So 2 weeks ago, we had a lunar eclipse in Libra. I didn't get a chance to make a video for that. Sorry guys, I was going through it. And so we had that lunar eclipse happen 2 weeks ago on the South Node in Libra, and now we have the solar eclipse happening on the North Node in Aries. This is happening exactly at 19 degrees 24 minutes, and we have an exact conjunction happening with Chiron. A conjunction means that the planets are exactly together, or they're within a certain amount of degrees from each other to be considered a conjunction. They are coming together. We also have obviously a sun and moon conjunction. That is what happens every time there's a new moon. And for this to be an eclipse, that means that the moon moves in front of the sun, blocking out the sun's light for a small portion of time, in this case around 4 minutes. So we have the sun, which represents our consciousness, and the moon, which represents our unconscious or subconscious. The moon is the unconscious moving in front of the consciousness, blocking it out. So we could be having our subconscious or unconscious fears coming in and blocking our consciousness from being able to function properly. We could have these wounds coming up so intensely because of the Chiron conjunction. Chiron is associated with wounds. It's the wounded healer asteroid. So these wounds could be coming up so intensely right now that we don't even know how to function in normal ways. But it's coming up for a reason. It's coming up because we need to see it. We need to be able to bring it into our consciousness, right? So, because normally the moon is not going to be blocking out the sun during the day. It's literally like being brought into a place of consciousness. They're conjunct, they're together, they're meeting each other so that it can be seen, so that we can heal, so we can actually heal it. It's not just this thing operating in the unconscious or the subconscious that's always happening in the background, but we can't see it, right? So in addition to that, this Aries eclipse, Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is the planet, the red planet, the planet of war, the god of war. It is representing the body and especially the head. And Mars is in Pisces right now. Mars doesn't really like Pisces energy very much. Mars wants to do and wants to be in the body, and Pisces is all about transcending the body, being in the spiritual realm, being in that realm in between the worlds, that liminal space. So Pisces and Mars in Pisces could mean that we need to turn towards our spiritual practices, something that we can embody. We are embodying this spiritual practice or this spiritual journey that we're on. And we are using those practices to heal that Chiron wound, that first initial wound that we had. So let's go ahead and talk about Chiron and get organized here, because there is just so much. It's taking me all over these places. That is why I have this here to keep me organized. So Chiron is a centaur asteroid. It is half man, half beast, half man, half horse is what a centaur is. And it is not just conjunct, it is exactly conjunct 19 minutes, 24 seconds. 24 minutes. It is as tight and as exact as it can possibly be in this conjunction. So, and Chiron's myth goes that when he was born from Saturn was his father, and then I can't remember his mother's name, but his mother was not supposed to be with Saturn or Kronos, the time god. And so when she got pregnant and had Chiron, she rejected him because she was first of all ashamed that this was a beastly child, half man, half horse. And she was ashamed of him, so she abandoned him. Saturn, Kronos, I guess, just didn't care enough, so he also abandoned Chiron as well, because their union was not wanted in the first place. And so that was Chiron's initial wound of abandonment, was that he was not wanted by his parents. And so that had nothing to do with him, really. He had absolutely no control over this wound and over this wounding that happened to him. He was just born. Aries, the first sign of the zodiac, that first initial moment where we come into this life, we come into this body, and we are coming into this I amness, right? I am coming into this journey, and this is the first moment of my life. So Aries is associated with that time in our lives. So because Chiron is in Aries, maybe we are going to be facing the wounds that happened before we had anything to say about it. The time of our lives where we had no control over what was happening to us. We were just children. We were just babies even. And since Mars is the ruler of Aries, Mars is associated with masculine energy. Not to trigger anybody with this, but I feel this could be for a lot of men in particular, could be addressing that initial wounding that happens to most men when they're babies, is this, circumcision process and thing that we've normalized, this mutilation that we've normalized that we do to babies when they're born. It's absolutely horrible, and it's something that affects all of us. Even if our minds don't remember what happened, our bodies remember what happened. And maybe this is coming up for you if you're a woman. Maybe you work in the healthcare system and you see this happen a lot. This is, coming up in some way. That was that first initial wounding for a lot of people. Whether you identify as male or female, maybe you're in a male body and you identify as female, you know what I mean. So that could be coming up for a lot of us. So after Chiron was abandoned by his parents, he was adopted by the sun god Apollo, who was a shepherd. So I thought that was interesting that, Chiron is conjunct the sun and the moon, but conjunct the sun, Apollo, his maybe true father, you know, the one that actually raised him, the one that taught him how to heal himself and how to become a healer and educated him, because Chiron was the most wise healer. People would come to his apothecary up on the mountain, they would seek him out, and he would be able to heal others and teach them as well. He actually taught Hercules, and many others. So, so Apollo, the sun god, right? He teaches him how to become a healer. And in addition to all that, we also have Saturn conjunct the moon and the sun during this eclipse too. Saturn, Kronos, the actual father of Chiron, was not only conjunct this eclipse, but was also conjunct Venus, which was the ruler of our last eclipse in Libra. So both of these eclipses have had Saturn conjunct to it. So we're really being called into this like spiritual discipline because Saturn is in Pisces. We're being called into like this, responsibility, like taking responsibility for our wounds, taking responsibility for our shit, you know, like we're being shown our unconscious and our subconscious, and we need to take responsibility for that and not play the victim, right? Because Aries has this tendency to play the victim, and even though we might be the victim in some case, right? Like, I'm not trying to invalidate anybody here. We definitely have all been a victim of something at one point or another in our lives. And we have these three roles that we play, right? We could either play the victim. We first need to acknowledge that we have been a victim, you know, and validate ourselves through that process, which is its own thing. You know, allow yourself to grieve and to you know, tell yourself that this was not my fault, right? And then there's this other role we play where we could either become from the victim become the perpetrator, where maybe there's bullying happening, you know, like the story with bullies. They have been hurt themselves. That's why they start to bully others. Hurt people, right? They have been initially hurt themselves. Or you could either become the perpetrator or you can become the healer like Chiron did. And so it definitely is this strong message of like, look at what role you're playing. Look at if you have become the perpetrator or if you have become the healer, and you know, and realizing that you have a choice in the matter of which role you play, because you don't want to stay in that victim either. Doesn't mean that we haven't been a victim at one point or another. Let me clarify that again. I'm not here to victim blame anybody. In fact, I'm hoping that we all have this opportunity to turn towards our hurt, turn towards that wound that we do all have at some point or another. That wound of abandonment, right? That initial wound that Chiron faces, abandonment. Where have we all felt abandoned? Where have we abandoned ourselves? You know, where have we been conditioned by culture to look outside of ourselves and get validation for that, right? Aries is you. It is you. Only you can validate yourself, and only you are tasked with this, with healing this wound, with healing and moving through the lessons that you have been given in this lifetime. Whew. So the other thing about Chiron is that he also co-rules the underworld with Pluto. And so I'm recording this today on Saturday the 6th. It's probably not gonna air until later tonight, or maybe even the 7th on Sunday. But we have a Venus conjunct Pluto happening today as well. So there's Pluto happening here, there's Chiron happening here, there's a lot of this underworld energy that we are navigating. In fact, Venus is going invisible, which is a term that's being used in astrology to signify that Venus is basically going into the underworld on a journey where this is kind of its own thing. She embodies these other archetypes where she goes on this journey of dying, essentially dying and being reborn. So we are in for it. We're having the masculine triggered with the Chiron, and we're having Venus conjunct Pluto today, and going on her underworld journey as well. So normally with all this Aries energy, we are ready to go. We are ready to initiate new things. We are ready to, like, a fire is lit under our asses, and we are like re-inspired, reinvigorated, revitalized. So we can, with Mercury in retrograde happening during this eclipse, we can still utilize those words: reinvigorate, revitalize, re-inspire. And it's also going to be this kind of like slowing down process, right? Of Mercury in retrograde. We're going to be asked to slow down and reset and rest. That's still an RE word. And we are being asked perhaps to look at what that wound is and what has come up for us during this huge portal. And perhaps in Aries, initiate something new in our daily lives, right? Because Mercury rules our daily lives and our daily habits. So let me just make sure that I've covered everything about Chiron that I wanted to talk about. The last thing I will say about Chiron and Aries that's conjunct here is that maybe we have felt this sense of, I don't deserve to live. That's what Chiron and Aries is it this wound that we might have that feels like, I don't even deserve to be here in this life, to be here on this earth, to live. I don't deserve to live. And that's really heavy. So just being so gentle with ourselves, if that is something that resonates and comes up for you, because that's very possible right now. Okay, so we're going to move on to talking more about like what it means to have this solar eclipse happen on the new moon. First of all, it has to be a new moon for a solar eclipse to happen, right? Because you need the sun and the moon right there in the same position. And since we have this new moon eclipse happening on the north node is associated with future things. It's associated with things that we are consuming, right? In Vedic astrology, the north node is known as Rahu, the head of the dragon. And Ketu is the tail of the dragon, which is the south node, associated with past. And with the north node, we can sometimes have a tendency to like fixate on whatever that is. We are maybe like becoming obsessed with it. We might even become insatiable, and like we can't get enough. We can't stop eating it. We can't stop consuming this. So there's like this balance that has to happen with the north node energy. And so the nodes of the moon is what I'm referring to when I say the nodes, and those nodes are also known as the nodes of fate. So eclipse energy is known for bringing in fated events, right? There's a lot of hype right now about something really horrible is gonna happen, something really huge is gonna happen, and I'm not here to say that it's not. I'm also not here to say that it definitely is. Personally, I know that solar eclipses are associated with the collective energy more so than the lunar eclipses, which are associated with, like, you know, your own personal things. The moon is your personal life, and the sun is kind of like your life in the collective. And so we very well could see crazy fated events happening. I'm not here to say that it's not going to happen. But I'm also not here to just contribute to the hype like I know what's going to happen. We don't know. None of us know. And I also feel as if that the eclipses are things that are fated, that happen to us, and not so much like we make it happen or we force it to happen, right? That's not fate. When we think of fate, we think of things that just happen, things that are just like meant for us. So maybe just like taking that time to allow and to just be, right? Like Mercury retrograde in Aries is kind of like, you know, Aries is normally this go, 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 do, like we're gonna make it happen, we're gonna move fast, because Mercury is fast moving things. It's one of the fastest moving planets. But Mercury retrograde in Aries is kind of like, what if we just slowed down and we just be? Like, we just be here now. Not to be cliche, but I intuitively feel as if that is what that means in this scenario. That can be a challenge for a lot of us. It is a challenge for me. I'll go ahead and say that right here, right now. It's a challenge for any of us that have been conditioned by capitalism to believe that resting and relaxing is not productive. We are here to be productive. We are here to make money. We are here to do and go. And we are losing our identity with being a human being, not a human doing. Once again, not to be cliche. So this is not just a new moon. This is a super moon, which means that the moon is as close to Earth as it can get. It's in that very close proximity. It's actually close enough to completely block out the sun. So that is a requirement as well for a total solar eclipse. I will say that the places that are actually just like hanging out in totality, and you'll be able to look up those cities if you want to know where you are. I'm sure you already know if you are. But the places that are just in the totality already, you don't have to go anywhere to be there. Those places are going to be most affected and most activated by this energy. And it obviously depends on your own chart as well, right? If you have any planets or placements at exactly 19 degrees or within that close proximity to 19 degrees of any of the cardinal signs, that's going to be Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn. That's going to be an activation for you, because you're either going to be in a square, a semi-square, or an opposition to the eclipse. Or you're going to be in conjunction, right? So that's something that you can look up for yourself. If you want to look up your chart, you can go to cafeastrology.com, look up your free chart if you have your birth time and birth location, or you can send it to me and I can look it up for you. Holla. All right, let's keep talking about the Aries energy. This is going to be a long one, guys. So bear with me here. We got a lot. Aries is obviously the first sign of the zodiac, as I said before. It is cardinal fire. Cardinal means that it is initiating. Fire is also like this spark energy. Think of like that first initial spark of a flame. Aries is one of 3 fire signs. So Aries is that spark of a flame. Leo is like that eternal flame that never burns out, that is like shining for all to see. And then Sagittarius is more like, let's all gather around the fireplace and like the fire pit and like have a party and hang out and be together and talk, you know, get real, like have some real talk. Anyways, side tangent there. Aries is actually really normally associated with ego, and I just learned this in my studies about this eclipse specifically. I have definitely been guilty of associating with Aries with ego, but Aries is actually, like I said, associated with that time of our lives where we just come into the world. We have no fear, like children, you know, like we don't have anything standing in our way. We don't have any conditioning yet that's standing in our way of like doing things that might be really scary, doing things that like might be a little crazy, or might be, you know, culturally not acceptable, or whatever it is. Like children just will go up to a stranger and start talking to them, you know, because they don't have any fear. They're not going to be like, oh, what if they don't like me? You know, like that's the ego. Or like, oh, I need to be better than this person and like act like I'm standoffish because I'm too good for them, or whatever. You know, like all of that is ego, and Aries doesn't really have that yet, which I thought was really, really cool to learn about that. So I wanted to say that for sure about and call myself out on my stereotyping Aries in the past. So if you've been personally victimized by Aries stereotypes. So Aries is known also as obviously the Mars, the god of war. And Aries is actually, since it's associated with the self, with you, it's kind of like you're going to war with yourself. Not fun. And so Aries has this tendency, like I said before, to be the victim and to project outwards onto others and like blame others, when all of that is just so that you can see. If you project it out onto others, it's so that you can finally see what it is in others that you don't like, which helps you to see within you what it is you don't like. It's all within you. The lesson is within you, if that makes any sense. It's this whole paradigm of like, you've heard it said that we're all reflections of each other. We truly are reflecting back to ourselves what it is that we need to heal within ourselves. I know that's a tough one to wrap your mind around, because it's so much easier to blame others. It's so much easier to point fingers and to say, you're the problem. You're the one that, you know, needs to fix themselves. Speaking of fixing ourselves, right, with this Chiron and Aries, we might see that wound or that flaw or whatever it is within ourselves, and the conditioning that we all have by a capitalism and by Christianity, the predominant philosophies that rule our culture, to see a flaw and to see this problem and to want to just condemn it, to cut it out, to amputate it instead of to accept it and to work to heal it so that it can become a healthy part of our personality and of our psyche, to go on that hero's journey, right? Aries can be the hero just as much as it can be the warrior. And we don't have to just eradicate ourselves of these things and push it aside and throw it out the window and say that was a bad part of ourselves. Like, what in that do we need to heal so that it can come back into balance, and so we can integrate, right? Integrate the shadow. That's what true shadow work is like not just looking at it and rejecting it and saying, I see that and I refuse to integrate it. Like, the integration process is the most important part and the hardest part. So yeah, I do want to say one more thing. I keep going back to the Chiron because it's so important and there's so much there for us. But think of Chiron and Aries as like this warrior that is in the middle of battle and has this wound, right? Like, let's say it's exactly the same wound that Chiron had physically, because he first has this emotional wound, the abandonment, and then he actually has a physical wound that happens later where he's shot and he can't heal physically after that. He could be this person in war, this Aries warrior that has suffered a tremendous physical wound to the point where you can't really fight very well anymore after that, right? Like, think of what would happen if you got shot in battle and you have to keep fighting, right? You're kind of like screwed. a little bit without cursing anymore. I've already done that twice. Anyways, so yeah, we've already talked about how it's not good to blame others. It's good to see what it is in others that are triggering us, and to look within and say, oh, maybe this is something within me, something that's happening within me that I need to address. Because remember, Aries is you. This is about you. Don't make it about them. This is about you. So yeah, we already talked about how that could be a masculine wound. It could also be associated with independence and how painful that is for some of us, right? Some of us have been forced to become hyper independent. I know I have in some parts of my life, forced to become hyper independent because it's easier for me to isolate myself, for any of us to isolate ourselves and to stay alone, because that means no one can hurt us. If we don't let anybody in and we're hyper independent, that means no one can hurt us if we don't let anybody in, right? When we're alone, we're safe. Mic drop on that one. So what we can do is we can look at Aries being this fire sign, right? Remember in Avatar, The Last Airbender, if you've seen it, which I'm sure most of us have at this point. It's amazing. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend this child's TV show for you adults to watch, because it's chock full of amazing wisdom. And so if you think of the firebenders, and if we think of when Aang was learning firebending, and it's so dangerous, and the teacher doesn't even want to start to teach him because it's so dangerous and so risky to use fire, and because fire is known to destroy, right? There is a way to heal with fire. It's just really this delicate art and this delicate skill that we have to learn to cultivate and use in a healthy way, instead of to destroy, now sometimes destroying is part of the healing process, don't get me wrong. I'm not here to love and light everything. I'm saying sometimes the destruction is definitely necessary, and sometimes we can use the heat and the fire to heal in ways where, you know, we sweat it out, right? We go to a sauna, we go to hot yoga, or whatever it is, we're sweating it out, we're using that heat to detoxify and purify. We are perhaps maybe using that fire of like that inner fighter, where we go to like a martial arts class or something. Maybe we are like punching our pillow because there's this fire within us, this anger, this this warrior that needs to fight something. Maybe we go to one of those like rec rooms where you can go in and you can just like destroy everything in this contained, safe place where nobody's actually getting hurt, and you're not actually destroying anything that isn't meant to be destroyed in this case. Axe throwing is another one of those things. And all these things are still associated with the body, right? We're still looking at how Aries is associated with the body. So we want to get into the body and perhaps, take out that anger, take out that destructive energy in a healthy way, turning towards healthy coping mechanisms. So those are some good examples. Oh, the last one I'm definitely going to be doing is like primal screaming. Like, just let it out and like just, you know what I mean? Like, just let it out and like let yourself go to that primal place of like the root chakra, right? Like Aries is our primal urges, it's our root chakra. It is the red energy, like that blood red. And so we can tap into that in a healthy way, and we can't ignore it, right? We have these primal urges, and a lot of us, again, have been conditioned by society to like ignore those urges and to just like sit down and be quiet and like don't make a fuss and like don't, you know, like we have to keep our wild alive. We have to keep that wild part of us alive and feed it in a healthy way. So, moving on from that. We got a lot here, just saying. Again, Mars is in Pisces, so there's this softness to it, there's this emotional part to it, there's this tendency to perhaps want to turn towards unhealthy coping mechanisms and to turn towards escapism. Pisces is escapism, and can be substance abuse. It can be bad. So we've got to watch that, and we cannot let those primal urges take us into these unhealthy coping mechanisms where we lose ourselves, right? Mars and Pisces, for me, once again, is definitely, let's take our spiritual practices and embody that and truly walk the walk. So we also have that Saturn conjunction, like I mentioned before. Saturn is also in Pisces. Again, just reestablishing that discipline in our spiritual practices. Like, do not fall off the train right now, guys. It's not a good time for that. Staying strong. Mars, the strong warrior. Stay strong in your spiritual practices and turn to them, because now is the time. Since we're talking about Mars and Saturn, I'm gonna go ahead and mention that we have Mars and Saturn conjunct on the 10th of April, right? The eclipse happens on the 8th. 2 days later, we have Mars and Saturn conjunct, and we have both of those planets as malefic planets, right? So they're not showing up with chocolates and flowers. That's one of my other astrologers said it like that, and I just love it, because, you know, we don't want to call them evil, we don't want to call them bad, because they're not bad. They're not sweet. They're not very sweet about the way they're showing up in this conjunction and in tandem with this eclipse energy. So we also have that happening. But we do have the Venus, Sun, Moon, Mercury, North Node, Chiron, all in Aries. And then we have, let's see. Right, Mars, Saturn, and Neptune all in Pisces. So we just have this Pisces, Aries energy playing together. That's the predominant energy in the sky. And so we have this beginnings and endings. Aries is the first sign of the zodiac. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. We have this like paradox happening. But remember, we have that new moon, new cycles, solar energy. In the tarot, the sun card is this new beginning, this new birth, this new project, new creation, whatever it is, newness. And more planets and more things are in Aries too. So we do have a lot of just like new energy, moving towards new things, initiating new things. But in this Mercury retrograde, we are like being shown what's going to be new. And then later, because Mercury goes direct on the 25th of April, we are like, okay, that's going to be when at the end of April, even past the 25th, because we have shadow period after that, past the 25th, that's going to be when we maybe actually start to do these new things. We're like being shown everything right now, and it's kind of like we're being blasted, like we're like the veil's being ripped away, and it's like, here it is. So that's why everybody's like, this is going to be so intense, because it might be. So just have grace. I will say also that we have a few of the other planets with their north nodes in Cancer. We have, sorry guys, I'm jumping all over the place in my notes, which is what I said I wasn't going to do. Pluto, Saturn, Jupiter, all of them have their north node in Cancer. So what that means is we are being asked to feel the feelings. Just feel it. Just feel it. Nurture yourself. Be your own healing mother. Be your own home. Like, remind yourself that you are always home and you will not abandon yourself, right? Chiron, abandonment wound. You will not abandon yourself. Whatever you need to do to reassure yourself, and know that it's okay to be a crybaby sometimes. Sometimes we have to be a crybaby in order to heal, because crying is healing, right? Like, after you have a good cry and you get done and you're like, oh God, now I feel, maybe you don't feel better, but I tend to feel a little bit better after a good cry. So let's see if we missed anything else. So with the Chiron in Aries, that could also be, with the eclipse in Aries, we could be eclipsing our identity in some way. Part of our identity could be lost. It could be eclipsed. But this could be a good thing or a bad thing. We could either lose part of our identity that is required in order for us to move into this new part of our lives, this new chapter of our lives, or we could not be identifying with a new part of ourselves that we need to be, that we refuse to be, because this wound is standing in the way of our ability to identify with this new thing. We don't believe it. We're not acknowledging ourselves in the way that we need to in order to move into this new chapter. So that could be associated, since Mars is in Pisces and that's the ruler, it could be associated with addicts and how they identify as an addict, but now they're in rehab, or now they're clean. I won't get into that, but I've always felt in AA, when people are encouraged to continuously throughout their entire lives identify as alcoholics, that has been some really kind of weird mind control that keeps them in that identity, that keeps them identified forever as an addict. And personally, that's just something that I felt was a little weird about the healing process that they go through. But I'm not here to discredit AA. If it works for you, it works for you. I just want people to heal to as much as they can, right, in the most effective way. And I believe in the power of affirmation and daily affirmation. So, with the Aries energy and all of this Aries energy, and with Mars and Pisces, we could be seeing an army of healers, right? Aries is the warrior. It is about ready to stand up and fight, and it doesn't care if it's charging forward without anybody else behind it supporting it. It is going to charge forward in whatever it believes in. And that could be in Aries, with Mars and Aries, or with Mars and Pisces. That could be an army of healers, which I love. Let's do it, y'all. Let's come together. Let's become this army of healers that we are so desperately in need of, stepping up to the plate and becoming the leaders, the pioneers in your healing modality. Whatever it is that you're doing that's healing, keep going, keep charging on, keep going. Do it. You're doing great. Oh man, let's make sure we have covered everything. We are getting down to the wire on this time. I wanted to address a couple quotes that I felt were really, really relevant to this, and there's some of my favorite quotes from my favorite person, one of my favorite people, Jim Carrey. We love him. We love that he went to the Maharishi University of whatever it is. He went to Maharishi University of Management. That's what it is. So, and he graduated and had this graduation speech, which I listen to on a pretty regular basis because he is just so good in the way he talks. He's like hilarious, right, in this speech, but he also just has like such profound wisdom that he shares. And so because Chiron and Aries can really be like afraid sometimes of failure, so it won't even try sometimes. That is just like, we don't want to fall into that. We really don't want to let the fear of failure stop us from trying. And the way he puts it in the speech is, so many of us choose our path out of fear disguised as practicality. Woo! Right there. Don't let that practicality bullshit, that conditioning of capitalism and whatever, don't let it stop you from dreaming big and dreaming your dreams that you know are meant for you, that you know you came here to dream and to achieve. One more that's kind of basically the same thing and not at the same time. He says, if there's one thing that my dad taught me was that you can fail at what you don't want, so you might as well take a chance on doing what you love. And that gets me every time, you guys, like every time. I'm telling you, I cannot tell you how many times I've listened to this speech, and it gets me every time. Woo, he's so good. So that was relevant, I felt, to all of the energy that we're feeling right now. And I wanted to share that because it's one of my favorites. I'll leave the link for that whole entire speech below because it's definitely just worth a listen. All of it is so great. I will say a couple more things about like what eclipsing means, because I don't think a lot of us really understand what that term means. It means, with this case, that the like I said in the beginning, the unconscious is coming into the conscious, and we're being seen that. Mars is in Pisces, which is Pisces is the ruler of the 12th house, which means that Mars is in the 12th house. 12th house things are hidden. They are in that spiritual realm. They're in that other realm. So we might not have the ability to see them all the time. But because this solar eclipse is basically because the ruler of this solar eclipse is in the 12th house, we are going to have these things that are hiding from us and that have been successfully hidden from us for so long now coming to the surface and coming into our consciousness. Sorry guys, phone died. I told you there was a lot here, so we're just gonna wrap it up. I have just a few more things that I wanted to really mention. I'm gonna try my best to make another shorter video about the upcoming conjunction with Jupiter and Uranus, because that is another really big thing that astrologers are making sure and making everyone aware about, because this is something that hasn't happened for 14 years. And that can bring sudden, like Uranus is sudden jolts and like unexpected things, and around Jupiter themes that's going to be like luck, abundance, expansion. It could be very good, it could be very bad. We don't really know, because Jupiter expands on whatever it touches, and sometimes when you have something get bigger or expand, it's not a good thing. You don't want to expand on your misery, or you don't want a tumor to get bigger. But sometimes getting things bigger, like your bank account or your success in something, that is a good thing, right? So It's happening in the sign of Taurus, so it could have something to do with our money, our values. It could have something to do with our self-worth. It could have something to do with our senses. It could have something to do with the literal earth, the surface of the earth. So we're just going to have to see what happens and that's going to happen on April 20th. So that's going to be like maybe another a burst of energy that could help us along the way on our new chapter that we're initiating with this eclipse. And so I already talked about the Saturn and Mars conjunction that's happening April 10th, just shortly after the eclipse, and that's definitely double down in your discipline and in your warrior-like approach to your healing life and to your spiritual journey. So the last thing I will say, these are the final themes that I just wanted to really make sure and double down with. Aries solar eclipse, look with conjunction to Chiron, we are looking at our ability to be alone. We are looking at if it hurts to be alone, if we don't want to be alone, if we prefer to be alone because we are afraid of being with others. What is our relationship to being alone? And where is the wound there, and where is it that we need to bring that back into balance? Balance, South Node, Libra. Libra is the scales. We want to watch out for any unconscious cycles being projected onto others. It's going to happen. It happens to all of us, but so when it does happen, it's so that we can see the cycles happening, because sometimes when they're stuck in the unconscious, we don't see it. So when we project it outwards, at least now we're given the opportunity to see it and to heal it, and obviously make amends if we've hurt others. So we really want to make sure that if when we see that wound, like I said before in the beginning, we don't just like eradicate it or like try to cut it off or condemn it. We just want to be gentle with ourselves, and like I said with the Cancer energy, just nurture ourselves, be our own home, be our own mother, not abandon ourselves, because that is going to be a huge one. Any emotions that we're feeling, any messages that were being sent from Mercury in retrograde is the messenger. We might have some uncomfortable messages that we are sitting with. Or uncomfortable emotions. Emotions is energy in motion. Get into your body, Mars ruled eclipse. Get into your body, move that energy. Remember that everything is impermanent. Remember that emotions come and go. Typically, it depends, of course, but typically you only feel a certain emotion for about a minute and a half. 90 seconds. You can be in an emotion for 90 seconds. Be present. Don't escape. Don't turn towards escapism. And essentially, there's just a couple more little things that are like side tangents that a lot of the people have been hyping up. So I'm sure you might have heard by now about the Devil's Comet that is in it's in our atmosphere right now, and it's apparently going to be able to be visible during the eclipse. It actually peaks on June 2nd, and we are only having that comet come in. I think it's every 41 years. Let me double check that one. I'm sorry, 71 years. We haven't seen this Devil's Comet in 71 years. They call it the Devil's Comet because there's like light trails and there's energy trails that come off of it, which is supposed to look like horns. They also call it the Horned Comet. And that, when a comet and eclipse happen together, that's a really like, a double whammy. That's kind of like the rocket booster to the eclipse energy on top of it, especially when it's so rare like this. There's a whole lot more to be said about that, conspiracy theories and whatever about what's happening in Gaza. I'm not here to confirm or deny any of that stuff. There's definitely like a lot of hype around this red heifer, thing that's happening in Gaza, where they're about to sacrifice this red heifer and fulfill a prophecy and initiate Armageddon, initiate Aries energy. The red heifer in Mars, the red planet. A lot of people think that this sacrifice is going to happen on the day of the eclipse. I'm not here to confirm or deny. I just know there's a lot of coincidences. I don't know how much these people actually know about astrology or care. That's his own thing. These are all just kind of like things that I thought were worth mentioning that are happening and they are in the collective consciousness, but I'm not trying to like feed or deny any of the like fear, right? I'm not here to fear monger. In fact, I'm here to empower us with knowledge and to make us all aware of what's happening, because naivety doesn't get us anywhere either, right? Like denial doesn't get us anywhere. Cognitive dissonance is probably enemy number one in these kinds of situations. Also, Venus and Jupiter will be visible in the sky at the time of the eclipse, so maybe see if you can see that. I know for me, where I'm going to be in Indianapolis, Indiana, it's calling for a cloudy day. And I just think that's hilarious as well, because, yeah, there's obviously this hype. There's all these, like, events happening where it's like, view the eclipse. And it's like, except for the weather says nah. It's like just showing us that, like, we can make as many plans as we want, especially during Mercury retrograde. But, like, chances are those plans, you know, the universe has its own plan, and that's the bottom line with all this stuff. So, like, let's practice surrender. Let's practice slowing down in the midst of this, like, crazy time. Let's have grace with ourselves, and, like, let's just do our best to heal. You know, like, that's all we can do. That's what we're here to do. That's especially what we're being called to do. Let's employ all of our tools in our toolbox to heal and to, you know, like, heal others and encourage others to heal themselves, really, is all we can do. We can't really heal anyone else. We can only encourage others to heal themselves and to have the courage, right? Aries, the courage to go on that pioneering hero's journey for themselves. So I think that's all I would need to say. I'm like, yeah, this is a lot. We got this. We got this. We are doing amazing. We are here on the precipice of profound change. And we are the midwives of New Earth. No big deal. No big deal. I love you all. Hang in there. Message me with any questions. Like I said, if you want me to look up your birth chart and tell you what house this is activating for you, or if you have any planets or placements that are especially at these important degrees, message me. I got you. And yeah, I love you. We are crazy. What a crazy time to be a human.